Either way, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for the Mi Gente in the workplace. And we are so excited to get the flow going. Here we go. All right, so I'll introduce myself. I am Felipa Cespedes. I am a proud Mexican and Cuban American. I graduated from the University of Minnesota in 2013. I'm also the proud owner of FotoGenic photo booths, and I am currently I'm currently an outreach associate for the Minnesota Office of Higher Education here for the state. So super excited to have been asked to be a moderator for this event, something that I truly love and enjoy and am passionate about the Latino culture. So, all right, so can I get a drum roll, Rebecca? No, I'm kidding. So we're just gonna jump right into it, and I want to present our panelists for today. We have Dr. Carola. We also have Dr. Maria. We have Carlos in the building, and of course, Rosa. So thank you all so much for being here and taking time to share out your knowledge, your experience. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about you all. So with that being said, let's jump right into the conversation or into the questions. And we can start the panelists if, so it's Carola, if you want to go first, Maria second, Carlos and Rosa. This will be the introduction question. So as we all know, society and communities continue to assign us labels such as Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Latine, or Latine, sorry, or Latine. So please introduce yourself. Which label do you identify with? And also share out what about your identity is most important to you as it pertains to the workforce.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Felipa, for the invitation. I think that first, I just wanted to appreciate the effort for putting this together and also be among of the panelists today, all these wonderful people. My name is Carola Carrera. I go by she, hers, her, or ella in Spanish. I was born and raised in Chile. So I guess that when people ask me about my label, I'm Chilean. And I have lived in the US for about, a decade so far. So I want to say that most of my early career experience in Chile was there, right? So only recently in the US. I currently work at 3M. It's a Minnesota-based company, right? I'm actually in the campus today. I work there as a senior research specialist in the division that takes care about oral care products, so everything for preventing oral disease. And I do have a vested interest on that. In Chile, I was trained as a dentist. I also did part of my work life in academia, so I was teaching dentistry. So I really have a passion, for oral health in general, so keeping people healthy. And, to me, this question about, our identity in the workplace, it really kind of triggered this reflection, right? And I thought about it, and also, I participated in some activities celebrating this month, right? And I think that it came kind of more clear to me that, of course, there are certain aspects of my Latin heritage. They're just my personality, right? Are just part of myself, are just part of what I do. I react, I answer, I question, right? But of course, before coming to the US, that wasn't evident, right? You are submerged in your country. That's what it is. It's your reality, it's your perspective, what you are living through. So it never comes first to mind just to analyze those traits. That's different once you migrate to the US and you are in this new environment, right? So throughout, this reflection, I can think of different features or elements that, are just part of my personality, such as, resilience, or that perseverance, or being creative, or resourcefulness, and also committed. And of course, related to the workplace, I just want to say that this is not something that you just bring on and you just realize and you're fully aware about your features or attributes. It's something that, just has evolved over time. I can give you the example of when I came to the US, I came for a very specific reason, which was to do my PhD, and it was in dentistry as well. So for that, I think that one of the parts of my personality that pulls the most was just that perseverance, right? There was a goal at the end of that work. There were challenges for doing research, and of the ones of you that are doing some scientific work or some other work, that you confront several challenges throughout your life. And I would say that perseverance also helped to overcome those challenges. So I take that with me, but it's not something that, I was fully aware of. It just happened. And after you complete a process, you realize, oh, yes, I fought for it and I was able to accomplish it. And I think that the other thing that, I really wanted to highlight regarding like identity, is that creativity aspect of things. Again, I grew up in Chile. I come from a middle class family. So you have to consider that is in a developing country. We didn't have all the resources growing up. I didn't have all the tools. So that I think that built that natural resilience and creativity of like solving problems with the little that you have, because that you had to do it before, and that's how it resulted. So when I think about in my current place or workplace, which is 3M, which I'm tasked to develop new solutions, of course that becomes very handy, right? Because you have that creative mindset, and I think that our brains just are wired maybe in something different. So I really embrace that. And again, it's something that you just realize after some reflection. And I think that the last one that I want to bring up, it's more personal. I think that maybe Chilean culture, I don't know, but it's that easy to laugh and positivism about things. I really think that sometimes brings some joy to the environment. I just got to acknowledge that I have gone through some cultural assimilation. So sometimes I want to rescue, some of those things that sometimes get more, diminished. But yeah, that's what pretty much I wanted to share with you. And I think that embracing yourself and not losing parts of yourself is very important for the workplace.
No, definitely. It's always important to reflect on how much you persevere through your experiences. No, I love it. Thank you, Carola, for sharing that. Rosa, would you like to go next?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I would like to also thank Rebecca and the Alumni Association for this invitation. And it's great to be here with my fellow alumni, with mi gente here. So I look forward to have this conversation and learn also from all of you today. So my name is Rosa Talk, and I am the Executive Director of the Minnesota Council on Latino Affairs. We are a state agency, so I work with government. And our agency, its main legislative mandate is to advise and make recommendations on policy and legislation to the state legislature, to the office of the governor and lieutenant governor, and to state agencies on issues that are critical for Latino Minnesotans. And in doing that, we want to make sure that we as Latino, Latina, Latinx, Hispanic, Chicanos, etc., we enjoy the same opportunities, and that we reduce barriers to access and to be successful in the legal, social, political, economic areas and in Minnesota. So, and the pronouns that I use are she, hers, and ella as well. So to respond to the question about the features or the identity that I bring to the workplace, I would say that very much like Carola, you know, I am an immigrant from Guatemala. So before I came to the United States, and when I came first to the University of Minnesota, to the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, I was an international student, first of all. And I'm from Guatemala, so that's my main identity as well. I'm very proud of it. And I already came as an adult and a professional. So when you come already as an adult, you already have you already have your identity built through your experience back home and through the experiences that you also go through as an international student and currently as an immigrant. So little did I know that I was going to come back to Minnesota. And when I decided to settle in Minnesota in 2005, I became a first generation immigrant from Guatemala. So I would say that my identity based first on my national origin has morphed into this category of Latina that I didn't grow up with. Through my work and through my experience here, I think that I have embraced that identity in a very large scope because, as you know, we are a very diverse group of people. We are very diverse in terms of our origins, in terms of our experiences here, in terms of our immigrant stories, but also because, as you also know, most Latinos in the United States are US born and have, so we have a variety of people, and which makes it very complex, but at the same time, very fun. When you think of the variety of cultures, cuisines, music, arts, and traditions and perspectives. So I would say that in my current role and responsibilities, I try to honor every day what I call my pan-Latin identity, meaning that I need to constantly be thinking of our diversity as a people and be inclusive, mindful, and embrace the complexity of our different communities as Latinos or Latinas. And when I do that, what I bring is that I try to foster a safe environment where people can feel that they can be themselves, that they can bring the best of themselves, that they feel comfortable with their respective identities and express them. But I would say that that's not the only identity that I bring to the workplace or to the spaces where I work. I think that I am also a professional. I am also a woman of color. I am somebody who loves public affairs, public policy, and advance the common good. That's my formation, that's my vocation as a public servant. And so I try to bring all of these different aspects of whom I am as a person. And I think that it makes it it is more complex, you know, it has different layers. And again, I think that honoring my heritage, my heritages, I think that by doing that, I bring that authenticity and that kind of openness. And I try to also open dialogue so that people become more curious about not only who I am, but also the kind of work that I do. So I think that very much I think that I could continue talking about this issue of identity because, as you know, It is something that is constantly evolving.
Yeah, well, don't worry, we have more questions about that coming up. So I'm definitely happy that you are working to make sure that all of our voices are represented, especially at the legislation. So that is great. The next one we'll have Carlos. If you want to describe, or I'm sorry, let us know as a society community continues to assign us labels. How do you label yourself, introduce yourself, and let us know how your identity is important in the workplace?
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I saw there's people in Duluth, there's from Fargo, all over the country to tune in. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to meet with us today. As Felipa mentioned, my name is Carlos Reyes. I identify with the he, him, his pronouns, and I work for Land O'Lakes in dairy food supply chain as a warehousing supervisor. Identities that I identify with as Mexican American as well. Both parents immigrated here to the United States and met in California. So originally from California, but now moved to Minnesota as of 1998. So you can kind of hear it in my accent. I have a Minnesotan accent. There's certain words that I use and people are like, oh, okay, yeah, he sounds like, a local, right? And I think it's funny that a lot of us on the panel, as well as on the call, are probably transplants to Minnesota. This isn't our native home, but this is our home now, right? One of the identities that I find most important in how I've been brought up, as well as how I carry myself, especially at a company that's not as diverse as I am, is being able to provide that bridge or that friendly or warm hand to others, right? Being inclusive of others' perspectives, others' ideas, other backgrounds, and other challenges that others may observe that you don't see, which I'll tap into kind of on the next question that we have here. But I think that's a really important piece that I take from the Latino Mexican culture, is being embracive of others, welcoming people like family, whether you know them for 5 years, 5 minutes, 5 decades, right? We're very bubbly and accepting of others, and we'll welcome you to your home. And so that's something that I bring to the table every day at my company, where we may not see that often. One thing too that I also bring, as Carola mentioned, was positivity and laughter. Those who know me from the way that I carry myself, I have a gregarious laugh. I'm always laughing, smiling, very positive, upbeat. And working in my role in supply chain and customer service, that serves me very well. Specifically, if you've been, if you haven't been under a rock, a lot of the issues with supply chain has been kind of the big buzzword during the pandemic, right? Why are things missing at the shelves at your stores? Why is this happening? Why are there shortages, et cetera? You have to attack those problems with a smile and with a positive outlook as best as possible. And I bring that to the way that I carry myself professionally, as well as not professionally and outside the workplace as well. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we need to have a whole nother topic on the supply chain just so that you could talk on that, because I'm still unaware.
That's the big buzzword, supply chain. We got plenty of openings.
No, I'm just kidding. Maria, would you, Dr. Maria, would you go next, please?
Yes. Thank you, Felipa, and thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, everyone, for being here. This is really exciting to be in community and share a little bit about the work that we all do and an opportunity to connect. So my name is Maria Pavon, and I am the Vice President for Equity and Inclusion at St. Olaf College. I do everything diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism, social justice at our institution. We are a small liberal arts college in the middle of nowhere. So a predominantly white institution. And I always say when I'm asked, how white is it? And I've been living in Minnesota for 17 years and I worked in a whiter place than St. Olaf. But at the same time, it allows for a lot of space to create change and to move the needle because of the size of the institution. A little bit about me and trying to think about the question. I am born and raised in Puerto Rico, moved to Minnesota, like I said, 17 years ago, because I really enjoyed the winter. That was my thing, was brought me here and kept me here. No, just kidding. I went back that first winter and just was like, I'm not going back. But I stayed. I didn't just came back, but stay for 60 more years after that one, and made Minnesota my home, my community, and I surround myself. So interesting, Carlos, you talk about transplant. I think I surround myself mostly by transplants. I don't know if part of my community I have a Minnesota-born person in there. I identify as Boricua, as Latina, and I'll talk a little bit in the next question about all the other different identities that have been given to me. But predominantly I identify as Boricua and Latina. And when I was looking at the question about what identities do I bring to the workplace, I bring all of them. I don't know how to separate them. I didn't grow up separating them, and I don't know how to do that. And with time and experience, I've learned that I don't serve myself and my community and other communities of colors by separating my identities and trying just to show up just a little bit about myself. So I try to bring as much as I can my full self to the table, understanding that that's gonna vary depending on the areas that I sit in, right? If I were to say to bring my full authentic self to the table, I would show up at work with sweatpants and a t-shirt, and that's just not appropriate. So, right, so there's some limits that I have to put in there on how I bring myself, but I try to just be true to myself, make sure that I do this work with authenticity, and that at the end of the day, I can leave my space feeling good about the work. I know this work is challenging. Doing diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially in the last 2 years, has just kind of raised the level of intensity. So I try to check in with myself on a regular basis. Am I proud of the work that I'm doing? Do I still have passion? Do I still feel like I can do this as Maria? And if the answer is yes, then I'll just stay on course. The moment it becomes no, then maybe I'll start applying to a job with you, Carlos. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
I love it. Thank you all for sharing. I know Carlos and Maria, they're eager to go to the first question because they brought it up twice in their introduction. So we'll jump right into it. The first question is for, we'll have Carlos go and Dr. Maria. How would you describe your journey and what it means to be unapologetic? Why am I getting the word tongue twisted? Okay, so unapologetic, and authentic self in the workplace. And please share a pivotal moment in that process where it kind of just hits you and you're like, you know what, this is who I am and I'm going to bring myself like as such. Carlos, if you want to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a tongue twister. Unapologetic. I like it. So one of the things that I want to kind of lead with is a lot of our speakers that are on the panel have mentioned kind of that self-reflective space, and they found their identity as a journey. So for those that are on the call that maybe feel like they're not there yet or that are still navigating that, believe me, you're going to navigate that your entire life. I mean, anytime you have a time to reflect, you're going to make those connections for yourself, and you're going to realize those things in real time. So don't feel like you need to be at a certain point to make those realizations for yourself. Because I think that this is an ongoing journey, especially as we navigate through challenges like Maria mentioned in the media, current social issues that are happening in the Twin Cities, but then outside of the Twin Cities that are happening to communities that look like us and that don't look like us. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. So the reason why I led with that is because at the University of Minnesota, I had a lot of connections with student groups and friends and took courses that were very centered on identity, learning about yourself, and you do a lot of growing up as an undergrad. At least I did. You know, you come out of high school, you're still young. You think you've mastered everything, but it's just the beginning, right? So navigating that journey for me, as I started applying for jobs, you know, one of the first questions they ask you, are you a diverse candidate? I was like, well, yeah, I'm Mexican American, like I'm Hispanic Latino. Let's check this box, right? And what does that mean? A lot of times, like, we are different than another candidate, and this may help us, this may not. You know, there's always the affirmative action comment that a lot of other candidates like to make, and you know, that's a challenge in and of itself, and that's another conversation, right? So obviously through the application process, you get calls, you do interviews, they bring you in, and my first job was actually at Target as a retail manager. So I was in the stores. I was the person dealing with the Karens of the world coming in for extra coupon questions and things like that, right? So that's where I get my customer service background, because I was in the trenches, if you will. And so one of the things that I've always brought to the table is obviously, well, not obvious, but I speak Spanish. So that's something that my parents taught me. That was my first language. And you know, I don't get to use it a whole lot in my current role or around me, right? I live north of the Twin Cities, so there's not really many other Mexican people that I can speak Spanish with, or Latinos. But anytime I get the chance to, I will, right? And so we had a situation where a cleaning team was coming to our facility, and they had a lot of questions, and a lot of the times there was nobody there to translate or help them out, right? And so one day they approached me. They were trying to work through their English, and I was like, well, do you speak Spanish? I was like, yes, I do. I was like, okay, well, what's going on? Like, tell me, I'll try and translate, and I'll bridge this gap here, right? So we translated what was going on, and at the end of the conversation, you know, the lady thanked me, and she said, hey, I've been working here for 2-3 years. Nobody's been able to assist me with the inquiries that I have. I usually have to go through a manager, and then the manager goes through me, and then it involves an escalated conversation when it doesn't need to be, right, with something so simple. And from that moment, that's when it really clicked for me as to what does that checkbox Latino mean, and what are the implications of bringing a diverse perspective and a diverse set of talent to your organization and your job and your career. From that moment on, I knew that my job as a Latino male is to advocate for other people that are maybe seen outside of the traditional workspace or the traditional people they work with normally, primarily in the Midwest here and primarily Minnesota. And a lot of our companies, you know, like I mentioned, there's not a lot of diversity depending on what spaces you work in. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I work at an agriculture company. There's not many Latinos. Where we see Latinos is more on the production level, more in the plants, not so much in the leadership, which is something that I'm looking forward to making that change there. But understanding that because I'm able to be in these spaces, I'm able to advocate for those perspectives and those people that may not have a seat at the table.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Carlos. Yeah, I think that always gets me. I always get teary-eyed when we have to translate for people at the grocery store or at other places. So thank you for showing up as yourself. And Dr. Maria, how do you continue to show up unapologetically as yourself without getting written up? No, I'm just kidding.
Without getting a written warning. You know, the unapologetic word is as messy as trying to show up that way, I think. So like I mentioned before, I moved here from Puerto Rico, and when I was thinking of this question, I was thinking of my journey, right? So I moved here, and I moved here as Maria, and yay, Boricua, and that was my identity. My ethnic identity was a bonus. It never defined what I could or couldn't do, and I came in here as a 21-year-old to start a PhD, and the moment I pretty much landed, I was given so many labels. I went from being Maria to being at risk, to being a statistic, to being Latina, to being Hispanic, to being Latinx, a person of color, a woman of color, and now BIPOC. So it just kind of, when I think of unapologetic and showing up, I think of all those identities and the meaning of those identities that then impact how I show up in the workplace, how I show up in different spaces. I had the privilege, like I said, of growing up in a way that I was very, very proud, and I am still extremely proud of my ethnic identity, and it guides everything that I do. It was never, my ethnicity was never an issue about what I could or couldn't achieve. And I see that being different with my kids, and how I need to change that language and interrupt that message and flip that narrative upside down. And for me, the way to do it is showing up authentically. And I'll give you one example of how I do that. And because I think, Carlos, after hearing you, I think it's something that we bring to the workplace, and is our laugh. I work in a very somber space. If you think president's offices are just very quiet, and I am not a somber human being, and I am not necessarily quiet, and I enjoy not being quiet, and I'm old enough that I'm totally okay with who I am, and I am okay being loud. And I have really, looking at the laugh, I have really embraced that. And you can hear me talking 3 doors down. You will hear me laughing, and when people are funny, which doesn't happen often, but you'll hear me, and I'm okay with showing up that way. And I'm okay with sometimes backhanded compliments, because when our students feel comfortable showing up in this space, because I'm here, and because they can connect with me due to the way that I speak, due to the way that I show up, because I laugh and I really do not care about the silence that surrounds me, that for me keeps pushing me to show up as my authentic self. So that's kind of one of those pieces in this journey, is trying to figure out what are the pieces that can make you stand out, and it can have positive and negative meanings attached to it. And how do you take that message and interrupt it and flip it and own it or reclaim it? So that's, and doing that, I think using laugh is kind of one of those examples of many different things and how we show up in spaces, that we can flip it. I think the other piece too that I've learned into being authentic to myself, I know when I do this work, I don't only represent my Latinx community, but I also represent other Black, Indigenous communities of color. And I keep that at the forefront of the work, but I have also learned from our younger generations that it's okay to take the pieces of traditions that build community and make you stronger, and then put to waste the pieces of our traditions that hinder progress. And for me, that has been my second part of showing up in my community as myself. What are the pieces about my culture that I need to throw out as waste, because it's not helping progress, and it's not helping our youth, our children grow and be better.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think a pivotal process for me, and even though it's not my question, but I think when I started correcting people how to say my name, like if they're like, oh, Felipa. And they're like, oh, and then I say it to them in Spanish just like that. And they're like, oh, and I'm like, you can call me Felipa though. But Felipa is my name. So I think that's how I show myself up all the time, and I'm not afraid to correct people anymore. So, so thank you both for sharing that. The next question is for Carola and Rosa. Dr. Carola, will you go first? The question is, what lessons have you learned that have helped you be successful in your career? Give us the gems, drop the gems here.
This is a very deep reflective question, I think, deep reflection. And I just want to say this because sometimes, again, it requires that self-awareness of your attributes, and you are just being yourself in the world, right? Like, I mean, you are a transplant, you're an immigrant, but on all those faces, I didn't think, okay, I'm going to go to the US to be an immigrant, right? Like I just was going there to do something, right? So again, it's about being conscious and learning from things that has happened in your life. And you know, one of the things that I just wanted to highlight from what Carlos said too, it's about figuring out yourself. To me, it's been a journey and a process, and probably because of that, I had these lessons, right? So becoming much more self-aware about myself, you know, my strengths, my weaknesses, and where, you know, I can work on myself and also for others. I would say that if I could label like one lesson of my life that, you know, extends to my work and different aspects of my life, is being a learner. I think that I just came to peace with, you know, during my PhD, for example, right, you ended up being very specific about a very specific topic, and you learn that you know so little about the world, right? And even though you try to gather all, to me was, it's okay. It's okay that you go throughout your life being a learner. I think that that really opens many more opportunities than thinking that you can manage it all or have all the answers. And I really try to apply that. And it's been very funny recently because I have a 3-year-old, and usually they ask you very interesting questions, right? So, I mean, it's just so fascinating, right? And you just figured out that as an adult, you just have entrapped your brain so much, and you really need to just let it go and be a little bit more open-minded. And if I had to link that maybe to my culture or heritage, I think that a little bit of that, you know, coming from another culture, right? And having to be inserted in another culture and having to learn from others, right? I have to come here, learn a new language, learn science, learn other, you know, ways of doing things. So I allowed myself to be flexible with that. To me, that's very important. And the other thing that I think that it's key to this is that if you feel that you are different in some way, right? Or somebody makes you feel different, either in a good way or in a bad way, I think that it's embracing, you know, what you can bring to the table, because you might have a different point of view. And that might be related with your cultural heritage or just your personality, right? And I can give you a very specific example, right? So immigrant coming from Chile, I'm a practicing dentist, seeing another reality of like burden of diseases in people. And I joined my team, which is a wonderful team at the end, but I noticed that their view of, you know, how to treat people was super US centric, and we are a global company. You know, so there was an opportunity to, hey, you know, I bring this other perspective and I can really, you know, bring that to the table. So again, I think that my major lesson so far is just continue to learn about myself, figure out my purpose. My purpose might not always be super defined. And I think that just remaining flexible for yourself and your learning journey, it's what drives me. That might work from some people, some other people might be more intentional, but I think that's what has worked in my life. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thank you. Super important to remain flexible and reflective. So thank you for sharing that. Rosa, what were some lessons you learned that have helped you be successful, especially in the political world? That is definitely interesting. So I can't wait to hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so very much like Carola and Maria and Carlos have been sharing with us, I think that success is also, it is not a destination. We cannot think about it as a destination, but as a journey where we are constantly learning, a journey where we are constantly adapting, a journey where we are constantly learning. And I think that because of our very specific stories and circumstances, I think that we have come to develop this resilience or resiliency that allows us to be flexible, adaptive, and see things from so many different perspectives, because we are complex people, as I mentioned before, which allows us to really be adaptive to what oneself can consider success. So I think that the first thing is to acknowledge that, and also to define what success means for us. Is it success in the professional level and the purpose and the goals that you want to attain? Is it success in your personal life? Is it success in both your private, family, and professional lives? So that's very important, to be intentional in defining what success is for you, because it might be very different depending on what you choose to do and how you then show up and develop your career or your goals or aspirations. That's very important to mention. Some lessons that I've learned in the political world or in the policy world, I think that I try to make a clear separation between politics and public policy. I work in the space of public policy, and I think that's important for me, because I think that there is more opportunity to educate people about the different issues that we're discussing right now, for instance, to inform and to make recommendations in a non-partisan way. And that allows you to present facts, to present evidence, and to start dialogues based on fact-based narratives instead of misconceptions of who Latinos in Minnesota are, for instance. But I would say that to navigate that space, which is predominantly male and white, as you all know, I think that my unapologetic way of doing it is that I'm gonna bring everything that I am. So I have come to learn to live with my accent, for instance, particularly because we all have accents. No matter what our native language is, we all have an accent anyway. So that's something that I bring and I don't care about. And I'm not gonna give any explanations. And if I need to give an explanation, I would say that that's because I speak 3 languages. I'm not gonna justify that, but that's something that I am very proud of, you know, and helps me navigate that world. The color of my skin, the same, you know, I'm not gonna be pretending to be anything else that who I am with everything that I am. And my heritage. So like everybody has been saying right now in this panel, we come and we are with the full extent of ourselves. And yes, and then the other thing that is important for all of us and for others who are maybe listening to us is that you have to choose your battles. You know, you have to choose your fights. Many times you would be confronted to bias, to prejudices, to macro and microaggressions, and you cannot deal with everything. You are not superhuman being, you know, so you have to choose your battles, what you're gonna be fighting and what you might use actually as an opportunity to continue growing and show the other persons how much value you bring to the table, how important your voice is to the table, and just keep moving forward, because otherwise it's impossible to actually navigate so many challenges that many of us still face when we work predominantly in this space. And the other thing is to just build community, build a team that can support your work as well. Go back to your community, to the persons that you rely more, your family, your family, your friends. And I would say that and look for help. Look for help when you are in these situations where you experience these challenges. And finally, I would say just be yourself. Just be yourself, and because there are different ways of being a leader, there are different ways of showing up, and as long as there is purpose, that there is a goal, and that you are advancing the common good, I think that you're going to be okay.
No, that's so true. I like the point that you made of finding community. Very important. You know, everyone has to have a work bestie. Everybody, you're gonna need that definitely as you go through your careers. So the next question, we have time for 2 responses before we go into the breakout session. This is a question that was put in the registration. So I will go ahead and read the question, and I would actually like to hear from Dr. Carola and Carlos on your response for this question. So the question reads, what are some of the ways you have seen your respective industry address the Latino, Latina, or Latinx community in various capacity, whether that's through hiring, internships, they're not student groups, but work networks at work. What are some of the ways that your industry is actually addressing and not just saying they want to address?
Yeah, Carlos, go ahead if you want to go. Okay. This is just a great question, because one thing is saying things, other things are acting. And I think that internally at 3M, this has been a tremendous reflection after George Floyd's death last year. 3M has claimed diversity and inclusive even much before that, but I think that really hit the community at 3M, and things move like with much more intensity. I likely, since I joined 3M 5 years ago, I've participated with less or more intensity at times on the Latino resource network that we have internally. So there is actually an structured Latino resource for employees that is meant to either advance you in like leadership skills or at the scientific community level. So, likely, I think that I'm likely enough that there is a community that embraces our heritage and celebrates it. And also you can see how higher levels of executives really support it. So that's very nice to experience. I think that, I was participating on this an internal meeting celebrating the Heritage Month at 3M. And one of the things that was posed that I think that is just super relevant for any, at least industry or company or work that you are applying for, is that one thing is hiring talent, right? And I think that the Latin community, as diverse as it is, it offers many attributes to be an excellent talent. But the other key aspect is talent retention. And I think that sometimes that talent retention for the Latin community may look different, because I think that in general, at least with the people that I have the opportunity to connect with within 3M, they share certain attributes about being passionate and the need of having a purpose, that you are making a difference in whatever level you're working. You'll be working in marketing, in science, on some other things, but there is that intrinsic passion. So that to me was very revealing. And I hope that at least at 3M, that talent retention really gets worked out at more, fine levels.
So have you seen them hiring more Latinos?
Yeah, so yes, there is that intention. I would say that, if you are in the campus, is predominantly white, but I feel that we have a good level of diversity in my teams. We have people from many countries, so I feel like a little bit at the U like that. But in general, of course, there is some predominance in the workplace. But yeah, yes.
Good to hear. Carlos?
Yeah, I would echo what Carola mentioned. There's definitely some strides that have been made by my company. There's big initiatives in terms of recruiting at HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities for some of their marketing programs and some of their internship programs. There's been a focus on referrals through our Latino ERG group, which is LOL Amigos. So that is a big network. But as Carola mentioned, there definitely needs to be some emphasis in retaining talent. One of the things with recruiting for the Midwest is, there's not a lot of the communities aren't very big from the Latin community, right? So when you get talent to come, and it stays here because of the purpose of needing to be on a campus at a facility to work there, it's very easy to coerce somebody to come, right? But as soon as we went remote, that's where we lost a lot of those connections with one another, with interacting daily. And I did see a lot of my friends leave the company, go to other companies either in the Midwest or move back home to wherever they're originally from. So that's, I think, industry-wide, that's going to be a challenge for all companies in the Midwest, and overall, really, with the recent influx of people leaving their jobs, right? Which is good. You know, it really makes these companies really look in the mirror and analyze what they're doing, and be real reflective on what's going on and pushing for challenges. But one thing I did want to call out, Land O'Lakes recently had a petition for immigration reform. We are an agriculture company, and a lot of our cooperatives that own that are member owners have a large Latino workforce, right? That happens to have, you know, these challenges with immigration, DACA, those sorts of initiatives. And a lot of times companies like to toe the line and be very careful about how they navigate those discussions. Our company, you know, through the work of their legislative contacts, they're putting an initiative together to send people out to DC to work on these initiatives that are farmer related, but also social justice related attributes, which is a new rollout that happened as of early this year. So that was a big stance that Land O'Lakes took in terms of pushing for that immigration reform, which I'm very proud to say that my company did that. You know, it's not perfect. We're not perfect. I don't think any company in the Midwest is perfect. I mean, anywhere, right? But we are making strides in that sense.
Well, I say my company's perfect, but you know, I'm just kidding.
No,
I'm just kidding.
I love it.
My personal business.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. And I'm happy that you share that, because it always is inspiring to see to hear about corporations or member-owned corporations actually stick their neck out too. You know, it's not just the people on the ground. We have time for one more answer. Dr. Maria, would you like to answer the question? What are some of the ways that you've seen your respective industry address the Latino community in the capacities? Have you seen more recruitment in your schools for Latino students, more internship opportunities? What have you seen?
Yeah, so very interesting in our institution, the students are domestic BIPOC students. The majority come from Latinx communities. So 13% of our students of color identify as Latino, Latina, Latinx. We also have a very large number of international students who come from Latin America. And then if you look at our leadership roles and staff, as well as our faculty, we have a high representation of Latinx faculty and leadership and staff, which was just mind-boggling, like blowing to me when I came to work here. I speak Spanish a lot on campus, which is just, right? It's just kind of surprising. So, but we want to continue to not, just because those numbers are in a good place or in a better place than they used to be, to continue to be more intentional in recruiting Latinx students as well as faculty and staff. So some of the pieces that we have done is for students, we collaborate with nonprofit institutions that have created institutions like Clues, et cetera, that are creating kind of pipelines for college students. And we get in there and talk about access to our institution. So we meet full financial need. So not for the first year or second year, for the entire time that the students are here, if they need financial need, like aid, everything will be covered. And so we talk about that because sometimes in our community, we see private institutions as unavailable, or how could I afford that? Or I would have to get into this amount of loans. And I want to kind of break that myth into conversation. So we do a lot of intentional recruiting with nonprofit organization, also in our Northfield communities. we partner very closely with the library as well as the middle schools and the high schools, because we have a very high Latinx community in Northfield. We have first and second generation immigrants. We also very close to Fairville. So those trying to kind of tap into those different communities and being very, very intentional that our institution represents more truly the community that we're in. So that's kind of one of those pieces. The same with staff and faculty is trying to build partnerships into making sure that we are recruiting Latinx staff and faculty in different areas. And that's what I always talk about our leadership roles, because we have, of our 6 directors, 3 of them are Latinos. So, which is just, I think it says a lot. But trying to continue to be very intentional into the partnerships that we create with graduate schools, as well as Hispanic serving institutions, to make sure that we can start when the students graduate, get them into the different positions that we have here.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And now I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca, because she will be sending us into our breakout sessions. If I'm going to go ahead and add the questions to the chat so that they're there. Hopefully they go with you. Oh, they're there. She already had them up.
No, it's okay. Thank you so much, Felipa, for leading our panel today. And thank you to all the panelists. Hope everyone sticks around for our breakout rooms. I know I emailed some information in advance to our meeting today, or our conversation today, but here on your screen are some of those questions that we're going to go through. Each of the panelists will be a room host, and then some of our planning members will be joining them in those rooms. So please stick around. We'll do that for about 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and do some share outs, 1 to 2 minutes of share outs. If we feel like that's too much time, feel free to message me back in the main room to let me know how it's going, and then we'll go from there. All right, thank you so much. I'm going to switch everyone around.